Welcome everyone to tonight's council meeting. Now, before the council meeting, we do have a public forum, and this public forum is being audio recorded for administrative purposes. By speaking at the public forum, you agree to being recorded. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this public forum that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this public forum. Any declarations of interest, Mr. CEO?
Thank you, Mayor King. We have two conflicts of interest declarations. First one is from Councillor Glacken. A non-pecuniary significant conflict of interest. Councillor Glacken is the nominated council representative on the Joint Regional Planning Panel, and the item that this refers to is public forum items 2.3 and 2.4, and the action Councillor Glacken will take is to leave the chamber and not participate in the meeting, in the forum. The second declaration of interest is from Councillor Thurley. Similarly, non-pecuniary significant conflict of interest relates to items in the public forum 2.3, 2.4. Sorry, I should mention what that is. Hospital car park, Albury Wodonga Health, Albury Hospital. The action Councillor Thurley will take is to leave the chamber when the matter is discussed in the public forum. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We have 4 speakers at tonight's public forum. A reminder that you each have 5 minutes to speak before council here tonight. Mr. Eli Davin is first up. It's item CM 9.1 in relation to the progressive pride flag. He is speaking in support of council's preferred recommendations.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, councillors. At a time when the state of Florida is advancing the Don't Say Gay bill that prohibits discussion of sexual orientation in the state's primary schools, and when last week our own federal government attempted to pass legislation that was a Trojan horse for hate, I cannot think of a more timely and appropriate decision and action for this council to take than to vote in favour of displaying the progressive pride flag in the council chambers during periods and celebration, during times and periods of celebration for the queer community. In early 2020, the Albury City Youth Council put our heads together to think of ways that we could advocate and support the Albury LGBTQIA+ community. After some discussions and consultations with local groups, we quickly realised that the issues that needed to be resolved were far out of our reach, and we couldn't do as much as we wanted to. However, the one thing we could do was make a symbolic gesture, and that was that would have a major impact on local queer young people, and that was to display the pride flag in the council chamber during our meetings. So early last year, we made the bold decision to display the flag in our meetings. That was a brave thing that we did, and we brought it to council. And I'm very pleased that it's been brought to you again this year. As I said when I addressed the council last year on this same issue, Albury has a fantastic record of supporting our local LGBTQIA+ community and has made many acts in support, like raising the pride flag in QE2 to mark the International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia and Biphobia, and even lit up Mama in rainbow colours during the marriage equality vote. The display of the pride flag isn't new or unheard of here in Albury, and in 2014, council voted in favour of endorsing marriage equality, and during the 2017 marriage equality plebiscite, council actually flew the pride flag outside of the council building. Many councils across Australia have previously or currently fly the rainbow flag as a symbolic gesture of support and inclusion for their lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender and queer residents, including Geelong, Blue Mountains, Newcastle, Shepparton, Woollera, and City of Sydney. I could name them all, but you don't want to be sitting here all night. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that council is the level of government most connected to the community. It is appropriate that council take this simple, inexpensive action to demonstrate inclusion and diversity in our community and to encourage community awareness of the homophobia and transphobia that continues in today's society. In 2017, when council decided to fly the pride flag outside of the council building, members of the community called it a brave thing. Well, councillors, tonight you have the opportunity to be brave once again. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Davin. Please stay there in case there are any questions. Councillors, any questions? Thank you, Mr. Davin. Our next speaker is Ms. Meg Sheehan, speaking to item CM 9.1, which is the progressive pride flag. Ms. Sheehan is speaking in support of council's preferred recommendations.
Thank you, councillors. I'm here today in support of the motion being put forward by Councillor Callaghan. I'm a youth worker, LGBTIQ advocate and event producer. I've also held multiple roles within local government in youth and community development across Northeast Victoria. As part of these roles, I have established and coordinated multiple social support groups for LGBTIQ young people and coordinated multiple events in celebration of the queer community. I've also been privileged to work in direct consultation with the Victorian government to provide feedback in regard to relevant issues that impact the queer community in regional areas. My experiences working alongside queer young people have repeatedly highlighted the discrimination that still resides within regional communities. One of the biggest challenges of queer people face living in Albury is discrimination and isolation. I can attest to this, having grown up here as a gay woman. There are many instances of homophobia that I've experienced throughout my life. The simple gesture of holding your partner's hand whilst walking down Dean Street can leave you open to the very real threat of being scorned, ridiculed and shamed, or even worse, violence. This is something that the majority take for granted. Although discrimination isn't always this blatantly obvious, homophobia and transphobia can be a subtle undercurrent, a vibration within your environment that indicates that it isn't safe to be you. Visibility matters. Our community has been fighting for decades for public approval and legal recognition of our rights. This couldn't be more evident than over the past week with the public discourse surrounding the Religious Discrimination Bill. Displaying the progressive pride flag is an opportunity for Albury City to visibly demonstrate leadership and support of the queer community. This motion will foster positive change and strengthen a culture that is inclusive, responsive, safe and accessible for queer people in Albury. Residing within a community that affirms and celebrates our identity is imperative for positive mental health. I'm sure that you're aware of the alarming statistics that reflect the impact that discrimination has on queer young people. I can personally attest for this as well, as I'm one of those young people. As an adolescent, struggling to come to terms with my sexuality resulted in major depression and anxiety. The depth of the angst, shame, guilt, distress, and internalized homophobia I experienced was paralysing and all-encompassing. I was both unable and unwilling to acknowledge my own sexual orientation, let alone confide in the people closest to me and in my mind jeopardise my relationships. At that point in time, there weren't any positive or visible indicators that conveyed it was safe for me to be me within this community. Queer visibility and dedicated safe spaces where queer people are affirmed, empowered and celebrated in our regional communities are quite literally life-saving. The display of the progressive pride flag will be a beacon of affirmation, safety, celebration and hope. I thank you all for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan. Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Our next speaker tonight is Mr. Anton Hutchinson. It's in relation to item CM 13.1, the hospital car park. And he is speaking that he doesn't support any recommendations.
That's all right.
And before we get into that, I do apologise. We do need to wait for our councillors that have declared a conflict of interest to leave the room, and they have done so. So noting that Councillor Thurley and Councillor Glacken have left the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, councillors. First of all, I've got to tell you that I'm not anti-car park. I am anti this car park. I'm strongly opposed to the 20-year temporary redesignation of the R1 certificate. Temporary is a few years, 20 is a long time. One of the things that the plan doesn't illustrate is, or doesn't highlight enough in my opinion, is that this is a staff car park. Now, while it is designated as 105 car parks, there'll be a change of shifts at 6 a.m, 3 p.m. and 10:30 p.m. every night. There'll be 100 cars in and 100 cars out. Motorbikes, foot traffic, etc., etc. Under this proposal, the boom gate is approximately 4 metres away from the nearest bedroom window. That will go up 600 times a day, middle of the night, first thing in the morning. I don't see how that is a reasonable prospect and for us to live in a community thing. Part of the council's bylaws or codes, which was in the application, was that we need to create reasonable amenity for occupants of non-resident development permitted in non-residential zones without causing unreasonable impact on the amenity of the neighbours. I think this plan, and I have provided an alternative plan that would be a compromise position. I think the hospital would be more than happy to have an attractive 70-car car park that directs traffic flow, is good for the neighbours. I can only imagine living near this thing, and at 10 o'clock at night, you've got 200 sets of car lights in and out of that area. Now, I don't think it's reasonable. I think there's good alternatives. I think the entry point is offensive, actually. I think we need a buffer, a safety zone. I think we need to relook at the lights scenario. We need to relook at the traffic flow scenario. In total, I think this is a plan that's probably suits the hospital, certainly suits the developer, but I don't think it does anything else for the rest of the community. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Mr. Hutchinson. Councillors, any questions? Thank you. Oh, Darren, sorry, Darren. Councillor Cameron, apologies. Councillor Cameron has a question, if you'd like, Mr. Hutchinson.
Thank you. Mr. Hutchinson,
Yes.
can I check you can hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can, thank you. Yes.
Could you briefly describe your alternative proposal?
Yes, I can. It's fully fenced to start off with, or not fully fenced. How can I show you a plan?
Where is it located?
There on your screen. Look at that. The green represents a 3 or 4 metre green belt that provides some breakage from the traffic and the residences. It has a designated that on the northern end, on the Rella Road end, there's a service road and an access to the roundabout already formed and ready for use. I think there's already a risk of water damage and flooding. Flooding already happens on the blocks to the east, north and east.
Thank you. So your proposal is on the same site, but with different engineering options.
Yes, exactly. Just a softer option.
Thanks very much.
Sorry, I went on too much.
That's all right. Councillors, any further questions? Mr. Hutchinson, thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Ms. Rochelle Walker. It's in relation to item CM 13.1, which is the hospital car park. And Ms. Walker doesn't support any recommendations, and that's why she's here to speak tonight.
Hi, good evening. Can everyone hear me? Thanks for letting me speak. Firstly, I'm opposed to the rezoning of the land to be rezoned from residential into like a car park. We have a housing shortage here in Albury-Wodonga. I don't know whether you're aware of that. There's a lot of kids today living in cars. And I know one particular person that has spent the last 8 months living in caravan parks, going from caravan parks to caravan parks with 2 dogs due to COVID. He was evicted, and I myself was evicted from my rental at the start of COVID because my landlord wanted to put my rent up $130 a week to capitalise on the COVID, because all the Sydney siders and Melbourne people were coming to Albury-Wodonga to escape from the cities. And so that drove up prices of the housing. So that's one thing that I wouldn't like to see, that the car park, to come about. There's a lot of low income families out there that can't afford housing at the moment. Houses start at $350 a week and upwards. There's nothing much around the $200 to $250 a week for housing. In regards to the car park itself, do you know how long it takes for us to get out of Bilber Street some days with all the traffic that goes into East Street? Some days I'm sitting there for 5 to 10 minutes a day, in the mornings especially, and about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, it's mayhem. All the traffic from the hospital comes in and out they all congregate into East Street. And if we build this car park, it also has an idea to come out onto East Street, which then would add more traffic into a dog's breakfast, I reckon. If the car park is to go ahead, why can't we have an entrance and an exit onto Barella Road? The other thing is we have a lot of people speeding up from the roundabout on East Street. So when they come off the roundabout, there's a lot of continuous traffic, as well as traffic coming down the hill, going into the hospital or coming out from the hospital. So there's a lot of cars in on East Street. And the other thing that we have a problem with getting out of Bilber Street is that there's car parks on either side of Bilber Street, and we have to crawl right out to see who's coming down the traffic. So if we have more traffic coming onto East Street from this car park, it's just going to be more mayhem. We are in a dead-end street. We only have one way in and one way out. People from Benyon Street and Eastern View Estate, they have multiple exits in that area, like Benyon Street, they can go right around, come out into the Harvey Norman complex, or you can exit via Margabarina. This car park is not fully fenced. So if the nurses and that are to leave their cars there overnight, do you know how much vandalism goes on in our area at the moment? There's no security cameras. Is there going to be a security guard for this car park? I mean, do the nurses walk down there at 3 a.m. in the morning on their own to a car park? Why can't the car park for the staff be up at the hospital itself and have this car park, if it is to be a car park, to be for visitors only? And that way people will come and go, but they will enter and exit on the Barella Road side. And that's about it. Thank you very much.
Apologies. Thank you, Ms. Walker. Does anyone have a question? Councillor Bowen?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, am I able to ask a question to a relevant member of staff, or does it just have to be to Ms. Walker? So thank you for your presentation, Ms. Walker, and to others before us. But if I could ask the relevant member of staff, other car parks on Barella Road, I understand the car parks on Barella Road are going to be removed so that way the entry off Barella Road is a much safer area for people to come in and out of Bilber Street.
Thank you for the question, and hopefully, thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. Just double checking, you mentioned Barella Road, but you're talking East Street for removal of car parks,
Cool.
Apologies, East Street. My
Yep.
apologies. Sorry.
Thank you. Yes, so thank you for the question again, and for you, Mayor King. So in regards to should council grant consent, there will be a requirement to do some works within East Street, which will likely result in the loss of a few car spaces to ensure that there's safe ingress and egress from the site.
Thank you. And I have another follow-up question, if I may, to the same relevant member of staff through Mayor King and also through the CEO, if I may. Is it possible to enter through Barella Road for that access road for that car park? Is that a possibility?
Thank you for the question again, and for you, Mayor King. So obviously it wouldn't be direct to Barella Road itself. There is a service road that has a frontage disc before it curls off. So if there was an entrance, it would have to be immediately, I guess, to the eastern portion of the site to get out to the service road out to Barella Road. Again, we haven't analysed that, as that wasn't part of the application, because that service road goes direct into Barella Road. Then they would have to have further discussions with Transport for New South Wales, and some of the considerations may be about how that service road accesses, the amount of vehicles that would travel to, and whether that may have some congestion or other impacts upon the functionality of Barella Road as it enters East Street. Hasn't been analysed, as it hasn't been part of the application.
Thank you.
No further questions from councillors. That completes the public forum for this evening. Thank you. So we can at this stage now ask for councillors Glacken and councillor Thurley to return to the chamber. We now move into our council meeting for Monday, the 14th of February, 2022. I'd like to invite Councillor Thurley to open with the prayer.
Thank you, Mayor King. We gather to represent the people of Albury who have entrusted us with this task. May our efforts be blessed with insight, wisdom and common sense. May our personal values give us honesty and courage to serve our community effectively and with respect for all.
I would like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people as the traditional custodians of the land that we meet upon today, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and future, for they hold the memories, culture, tradition and hopes of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people that contribute to our community. This council meeting is being webcast and recorded. By speaking at the council meeting, you agree to being recorded and webcast. Please ensure that if and when you are speaking at this council meeting that you are respectful to other people and use appropriate language. Albury City accepts no liability for any defamatory or offensive remarks or gestures made during the course of this council meeting. An audio recording will be made for administrative purposes. Item CM3, conflict of interest declarations received by the Chair and disclosure of political donations. Mr. CEO.
Thank you, Mayor King. We've received two conflict of interest declarations. The first being from Councillor Thurley, a non-pecuniary significant interest. The item relates to item 13.2, alterations and additions to the Albury Base Hospital. The DA will be determined by the Joint Regional Planning Panel, of which Councillor Thurley is the council delegate. The action that is to be taken is to leave the chamber when the matter's discussed, and also the item we've just discussed in the public forum, item 13.1, is included in that declaration of interest. The second declaration of interest is from Councillor Glacken. Again, non-pecuniary significant conflict of interest. Councillor Glacken is the nominated council representatives on the Joint Regional Planning Panel. Again, relating to item 13.1 and 13.2, the hospital car park and the hospital emergency department redevelopment. The action to be taken is to leave the chamber and not participate or vote. That's all in terms of the conflict of interest declarations, Mayor King. In relation to disclosure of political donations, the advice to the council meeting is that under the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act 1979, section 10.4 requires a person submitting a planning application or submissions regarding a planning application to disclose any reportable political donation and or gifts to any local councillor or employee of council. Reportable political donations include those of or above $1,000. The disclosure statement forms are available on the council's website or from the customer service centre and must be lodged in accordance with the Act. In dealing with development applications, councillors need to take into account specific planning matters contained in the Environmental Planning and Assessment Act. Accordingly, the provisions of section 4.151 of that Act are set out in the council officer's report detailing planning issues to be considered. The Local Government Act 1993, section 375A requires that a division be called whenever a motion for a planning decision is put at a meeting of the council. Planning decision means a decision made in the exercise of a function of council under the Act, including a decision relating to a development application, an environmental planning instrument, a development control plan, or a development contribution plan under that Act. It does not include the making of an order under Division 9.3 of Part 9 of that Act. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Item CM4, apologies. There are no apologies received. CM5, the mayoral minute. There is no mayoral minute. CM6, action plans. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. Just wait till it comes back on the board.
Yes, we'll just wait till we have our IT so everyone watching the meeting can see what the motion is. So bear with us a moment. Stand by.
I can, no, I can't, I'll wait.
While we look to get the wording up, I think we're comfortable.
Yep.
If the motion can be read, Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that the following action plans be received and noted. 1, actions complete for noting only. 2, actions awaiting response from external parties. 3, actions in progress. And 4, long-term issues more than 3 months.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Betteridge.
Happy to second.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Any questions or debate? Needing to close it all or happy to put the motion? Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is passed. Thank you. Item CM7, confirmation of minutes of the previous meetings. CM 7.1, minutes of the council meeting held on Monday, the 10th of January, 2022 at 6 p.m. Councillor Betteridge.
Madam Mayor, I don't know if you can hear me, Madam Mayor, but I've lost audio. Yeah. Yeah. Look, I've just unmuted myself, but I'm still hearing nothing from the meeting. Yeah, okay. I don't know if my voice is coming through. Yeah, I can hear it. Right.
Councillor Cameron, just checking whether you can hear us.
Yes, thank you. I appear to be back. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Do you have a question, Steve? You hit your question button.
Did we do the confirmation of the minutes? Can't recall.
Yes.
It's been carried. Thank you, everyone. Next item is CM8, reports from community forums. There are no reports from community forums. CM9, notices of motion or notices of rescission. CM 9.1, notice of motion, progressive pride flag. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. That the council, in accordance with the Civic Flag Protocol, approves temporary display of the Progress Pride flag in the council chamber during Pride Month and other council meetings on or near to national days periods of celebration, with dates to be determined by officers.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. I speak in favour of this motion as it is our responsibility to act in good governance for all people in our community. The Progress Pride flag represents diversity, and by displaying it at a council on or near days of recognition, it symbolises inclusivity, making it clear that Albury City values all people regardless of the race, gender, sexual orientation or identification. The policy to display the flag will further raise awareness around equal access to opportunities and resources for people who might be otherwise marginalised. Humanity is looking after all people, giving everyone a seat at the table. No one is excluded. We all have value, including those who identify as part of the LGBTQIA+ community. It is a small financial cost that can deliver huge community benefits, allowing people to know that they are valued and are welcome. Thank you, Mayor King.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Are you happy to take a question? Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to the Madam Mayor, through you to the most relevant member of staff. It's a procedural question, really. And I refer to the report. It says on the 26th of April 2021, the council resolved that council endorsed display of the Pride flag in the council chamber during council meetings on the 15th and 28th of June 2021. My question is, had we been not specific in the last term of council and not determined those actual dates for 2021 specifically, would this otherwise not have needed to come to council? Would it simply have been, had we said generically for future, that it would not have come back again tonight?
Mr. CEO.
Thanks for the question through you, Mayor King. Yes, that's the case, Councillor Glacken. The council of the day was specific on those two dates as per that resolution in the report.
Speaking for Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm speaking in wholehearted support of this motion. The Progress Pride flag is a universal symbol for the modern queer community. As well as the traditional colours of the rainbow, the Progress Pride flag has 5 additional colours: black, brown, pink, blue and white, to represent transgender people and people of colour in the queer community. We've heard what displaying this flag means to young people and our community. I'd like to thank Eli and Meg for coming to speak to us today and share their stories. I also commend the Youth Council for persevering with this request. It's been a tough time for our queer community with recent events of federal politics, and I'd like to apologise for any additional harm this debate may cause queer people at this time. This isn't about politics, it's about people, it's about acceptance, it's about mental health and well-being. It's a small gesture that sends a big message that the LGBTQIA+ community are welcome in Albury, not just welcome and accepted, but embraced and celebrated. Wagga Wagga, another regional city to our north, celebrates their queer community with rainbow painted steps and an amazing Mardi Gras festival. I'd love to see such displays of support in our city, but this motion is a great place to start. I want my kids to grow up in a city that's safe, diverse and inclusive, a place where they can thrive by just being themselves, a place where their voices are heard. And I encourage councillors to hear the voices of Albury's young people now who have asked for our support with this small thing that means so much to them. Displaying the Progress Pride flag in the Albury Council chamber will affirm Albury as a community that cares about diversity and inclusion and has the courage to show it. This is the Albury that I'm proud to live in. Thank you.
Happy to take a question, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. To the relevant member of staff, so that I have the understanding, does this mean that going forward that the Pride flag will be displayed at times going forward on a yearly basis until any future for the term of this council?
Thank you for the question through you, Mayor King. So the motion details the response to the question, essentially, that the flag will be displayed in the chamber on or near to the national days or periods of celebration, with the dates to be determined by the officers. So we'll look at the calendar on a national basis, identify which of those dates would align with the council's resolution, and that would be on an ongoing basis.
I believe Councillor Cameron may be speaking against. I may have missed your marker. Yep. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak against the motion?
I don't actually wish to speak against it, Madam Mayor, but it's just simply the only way I can get the call to do what I wish to do by this way. Look, I wholeheartedly support the motion, but I would like to change one word, and that word is the last word, and I'm proposing an amendment. And the simple amendment I would propose is that the word officers be changed to council, so that dates to be determined by council rather than by officers. If I can get a seconder, I'll propound the reasons why.
Councillors, do we have a...
So you're moving an amendment?
Oh, we're moving an amendment. Happy to move an amendment.
Please move the amendment.
So we have a seconder for an amendment. Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak to your amended motion?
Very briefly, look, I agree with the other councillors who have spoken to date. I support this idea, and I would simply say that we are responsible as a council and as individual councillors to the people of the city. And when we bring in new innovations, even positive, what I believe is a positive innovation, we should be responsible for the decisions of when and how those things are implemented, and not simply give the staff carte blanche to carry out the resolution as and seems good to them. This is properly a decision for council, and it's properly a decision, I believe, that the detail around it should be also made by council. Thank you.
Speaking for the amended motion, Councillor Betteridge.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor King. A gesture that includes groups that feel discriminated or isolated in our community should be supported. And I believe as councillors, we are the leaders of our community, and we should make a decision on what days the flag should be shown. I think Councillor Cameron's amendment is to be supported, and I would be very comfortable to work with other councillors to bring up an agenda of dates that this flag should be shown. Thank you.
Speaking for Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I had my light on before, but I don't think the change to council from officers makes a lot of difference, but I'm wholeheartedly in favour of it. It's beautifully spoken by Meg and Eli, and also moving by Jess and Ashley. There's not much more I can add, but only that the group of the community that we're talking about have been in the past really marginalised and discriminated against, and it's very, very poor for people with mental health for that sort of thing to occur. And I think it's just a simple and generous gesture that our council can make, so wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Councillor Glacken speaking against.
Yes, against the amendment, whilst I seconded it so I could hear Councillor Cameron's motion and his the reasons why he was changing to be determined by council. I actually think the previous motion was better, that it should be determined by the officers. I see no reason why it should have to come back to council again. I was a bit surprised it was on the agenda this evening, or brought to us to be dealt with again. But I now acknowledge that it needed to be because the previous motion had dealt with one singular year. I think this has become a part of council, and we need to allow our staff to deal with it, just as they do deal with so many other things by delegation. So I believe we should be delegating this to the council staff to deal with this for the very much longer term and well into the future. Thank you very much.
Happy to take a question. Councillor Baker.
Well, with permission of the mover, should we just put determined by council / officers, full stop?
Councillor Cameron.
Well, without wishing to be offensive, that makes no sense whatsoever. That's like saying yes and no. It has to be one or the other.
Speaking, another question.
Question. Yeah, I would imagine that it will come to councillors' notice through officers anyway. And it makes sense to me. I've probably got a different way of looking at things to you, Darren.
Councillor Cameron, do you wish to speak to the question?
Only this, Madam Mayor. I'm baffled as to what Councillor Baker means, but you know, I guess he knows what he means. I hope he does. It's also, I might also remark, it's the code of meeting practice that we address each other as councillor. You know, fraternal, although my feelings may be towards all here. How this would work in practice, I imagine, is that staff would prepare a report like they do in every other thing that we determine with recommended dates, and we would adopt that or modify it as council sees fit. That's the correct way to approach this, I believe, and that's why I've moved this amendment. Thank you.
Speaking for Councillor Thurley. For the amendment, Councillor Thurley.
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. I would have supported the original motion. I think the speakers we've had tonight have made a very clear case of why we should do this. However, Councillor Cameron made the very salient point that it's councillors who make the decisions. It may be based on recommendations of the staff, and I'm sure that the staff will have input. But in the end, it's councillors who make the decision, so I support this amendment.
Speaking against, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. Yes, I'd like to speak against the amendment. I think it's entirely unnecessary and probably a way to undermine the intent of the original motion, which was quite positive. I can't see what other celebrations, national days or periods that the councillors would object to if they're supporting the original intent of the motion. So that's why I'm speaking against. Thank you.
No one else for, so also speaking against the amended motion, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I am against the amendment in the fact that I would like to have it carried and moved this evening so that the Youth Council know that it's carried and that the process isn't dragged out. I have full trust in the officers that they would make the best decisions on the dates that are available. And I don't think it needs to come back to the councillors to make another decision in regards to this. Thank you, Mayor King.
Councillor Cameron, do you wish to close debate?
Yes, I must.
The amended motion.
And can I simply say that there is no agenda at all in weakening or frustrating the substantive motion. That's not my intention, and it's not the effect of my amendment. Likewise, Councillor Callaghan's suggestion that this would somehow delay or obfuscate the motion is just not so. The decision will be made just as speedily in practical terms, whether by council or by the officers. We all support the idea of displaying the Pride Progress flag. It's simply a matter of taking responsibility for those things that we are responsible for. Decisions like this as elected councillors, because there will be some people in our community who are, and I believe they're a very small minority, who will be opposed to this idea. And it is our job as councillors to stand up and defend our decision and defend the people that we are seeking to reassure by adopting this motion. Thank you.
No other speakers for or against. Happy to put the amended motion. So if we're ready to vote on that, those for the amended motion, those against, the motion is lost. So now I believe we refer to the original motion. So happy to open debate. If there's any further speakers for or against the original motion. Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. And with respect to all people here, just want to make sure that we're able to do this. And if I would have thought that the resolution or the motion is being supported by the councillors itself, and then giving the authority to the team or the staff to implement that. And I think once we've made that decision now, that is a council decision, and we've done it, and it's put to bed. So I'm happy for that to continue to go forward and get some action.
Any further speakers for or against the original motion? Councillor Callaghan, do you wish to close debate?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. The Progress Pride flag is a symbol which celebrates and embraces diversity and difference, and I'm proud to raise my hand in support of its display at the Albury City Council. I would like to also thank Meg and Eli and those that have spoken in support of the motion this evening. Collectively, we all have a role to play in looking after one another and removing barriers, providing equal opportunity for all. I look forward to supporting Youth Council now and into the future. Visibility matters and you matter. Celebration, not discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Callaghan. Happy for us to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 9.2, notice of motion, shade for playgrounds. Councillor Callaghan. Oh, no, Edwards. Oh, I thought I hit 4. I mustn't have cleared it from before. Apologies. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council receives a report by May 2022 detailing the degree of shade protection over all council-owned play spaces and the costs of installing shade sails over all council-owned play spaces and forward plantings of shade trees, including but not limited to A, audit of council play spaces which have 1, have a shade sail over the play equipment, 2, have significant shading over the play equipment from tree canopies, 3, have minimal shading over the play equipment from tree canopies, and 4, have no shade over the play equipment. B, the cost of installing shade sails over the play spaces which have minimal or no shading over the play equipment, citing economies of scale when receiving quotes, with consideration given to the use of recycled shade sail material. C, the cost of planting shade trees around play spaces for long-term shade protection where there is not continual shading from existing tree canopies. And D, the process for introducing mandatory shade sail and shade tree planting requirements for all future play spaces, including ones currently being built for play spaces owned and maintained by council.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to second the motion.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, please, Mayor King. Shade over play spaces is ideal for comfort and safety and is important for climate change mitigation and adaptation. However, shade trees take many years to grow and children need protection from the sun in the short term while trees mature. Shade in the form of shade sails ensures protection against harmful UV radiation and helps prevent equipment in the warmer months from getting too hot, making our play spaces safer and more functional while encouraging physical activity. I've had numerous families raise concerns about the lack of shade at play spaces around our city, new and old. And I know I avoid many play spaces in Albury with my own children because they're simply too hot during the day. Cancer Council New South Wales has commended Albury City's inclusion of the importance of providing shade for UV protection in our local strategic planning statement. According to the Cancer Council, Albury City Council can provide an important role in reducing the risk of skin cancer of children and residents through thoughtful planning and design of effective shade. Good quality shade can reduce UV exposure by up to 75%. In priority spaces, including spaces used by children, well-designed, appropriately located and properly budgeted shade is a critically important design consideration, assisting the community in reducing its exposure to UV radiation and hence reducing its risk of skin cancer. Cancer Council New South Wales strongly supports the provision of quality shade in all playgrounds in the Albury LGA and urges Council to consider retrofitting shade to existing playgrounds that lack quality shade and plan and budget properly in advance for built and natural shade in local playgrounds. The provision of adequate shade at play spaces is in accordance with Albury City's local strategic planning statement priorities, including Planning Priority 10, adapting to the impacts of urban and natural hazards and climate change, and Priority 12, great places for our community to enjoy, in addition to the associated directions, themes and actions of Albury 2030, 2 Cities, 1 Community, and the Riverina Murray Regional Plan. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, are you happy to take a question?
Yes.
Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to the most relevant member of staff, Madam Mayor. With reference to the note from the CEO at the bottom of page 29, it indicates that the staff have already commenced a review and a report on shade sales and play spaces, etc., including shading. The question to the most relevant member of staff is, noting that staff have already commenced this, are each of the items, other than perhaps the last item D, areas that the staff are already collating and working towards for the final report, or are there, other than perhaps D, items that have not been included in the work already undertaken by staff, noting that their anticipated completion of the already commenced work was April 2022.
Mr. Costello.
Mr. CEO.
Mr. Costello.
Mr. Costello.
Thanks very much for the question, Councillor Glacken, and through you, Mayor King. Yeah, absolutely. We're capturing all that information that's referred to in the intent of the motion there as read. And the audit's probably about 70% of the way completed already, with a lot of that information in terms of tree shading, those that had artificial shade as well, all captured, and the extent of some of the remediation works that would need to be undertaken. So we're quite confident that the audit will be able to yield the findings to support the report that comes back to Council. Thank you.
Okay, and if I may further follow up through you, Madam Mayor, to the most relevant member of staff, can you confirm, does that include the possibility of future, I suppose, policy for Council for introducing mandatory shade sales or shade tree planting requirements?
Mr. Costello.
Yeah, thanks very much for the question, Councillor Glacken, and again through you, Mayor King. Absolutely would address that in the motion. As it stands now, historically, when we do any redevelopments, we certainly look to have shade as an important factor on all of our new builds, but we could certainly look to introduce that through a policy setting if required through the Council report.
Thank you. Thank you.
Speaking for Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I speak for the motion to have an audit on the play space in Albury, and glad that the audit will come in a month earlier, already been noted in the motion. As we know, shade reduces the risk of skin cancer, the most common cancer in Australia, and high sun exposure during the first 10 years of someone's life more than doubles the risk of melanoma. Shade protects children and their families from extreme heat, and the shade covers do reduce by up to 20 degrees. High quality and well-designed shading playgrounds can reduce exposure, as noted, harmful UV rays by up to 75%. And shade protects the play equipment from degradation. All facts from the New South Wales Government Cancer Institute of New South Wales into benchmarking shade in New South Wales playgrounds. And spending the money to protect our community is vital, and we will reap the health and social benefits over time, and active kids are happy kids. And it's a positive sign that the shade is already been activated. So thank you.
Any speakers against? Speaker for, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor, and I acknowledge the opportunity to be a third speaker for, and I wish really to highlight the fact, as has been raised by Councillor Edwards, that this was very much a part of the 2030, I think it was Councillor Edwards or Councillor Callaghan, I think it was Councillor Edwards, very much a part of a component or a significant component of the Albury 2030 plan, and the staff have been working towards this for a number of years, and it's great that they are ahead of the game. So congratulations to the staff, and I too look forward to the report coming forward. Thank you.
There are no more speakers for or against. Happy to put the motion. Oh, no, you've got to wrap up. Sorry. Councillor Edwards needs to close debate. Do you wish to sum up? Sorry.
Thank you, Mayor King. This report will provide councillors and the community with the information needed to understand how many play spaces in our region have adequate shading, and the costs associated with providing shade in the form of shade sales and tree plantings for those play spaces which do not have adequate shading. I'd encourage all councillors to support the motion for the health of our children and generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Now I'm happy to put the motion. If those in favour, those for the motion, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM10, presentations and deputations. There are no presentations and deputations. CM11, reports or minutes of committees and working parties. CM11.1, minutes of the Mama Interim Acquisitions Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 4th of November. Do we have a mover? Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Mama Interim Acquisitions Committee held on Thursday, the 4th of November 2021.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I feel a bit of a fraud. It's the only meeting that I was an apology for, so I can't really speak to the motion.
Councillors, anyone speaking for or against? If there are no further for or against, did you wish to sum up, Councillor Thurley? Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, and the motion is carried. CM 11.2, minutes of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 11th of November 2021. Would Councillor like to move that? Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Floodplain Risk Management Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 11th of November 2021.
Councillor Betteridge.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak?
Once again, I move it as a procedural matter, given that the previous delegate is no longer a councillor.
All right, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 11.3, minutes of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 17th of November 2021. Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you. Through you, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 17th of November 2021, noting that Councillor Thurley and I were both present at that meeting.
Councillor Thurley.
I second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Gluckin, do you wish to speak further? Happy to put the motion. Any questions or debate, anyone?
I would like to raise.
Sorry, I didn't. No, got you turned on. Sorry, Councillor Gluckin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to raise one point, the very bottom of page 2. We refer to, at this point in the meeting, the chair asked Jason Young to talk about his interest in the audit and risk and improvement area, and Justin gave an overview. I'm sure Justin would have allowed Jason to speak at that meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, councillors. Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 11.4, minutes of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 17th of November, 2021. Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, I'd like to move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendation of the Sports Albury Advisory Committee meeting held on Wednesday, the 17th of November, 2021.
Councillor Glacken.
Happy to second.
Councillor Betteridge, do you wish to speak to the motion? Councillors, any question or debate? Do you wish to sum up? Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Item CM 11.5, minutes of the Local Traffic Committee meeting held on Thursday, the 25th of November, 2021. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes recommendations of the Local Traffic Committee meeting held on Thursday, 25 November 2021. Note that I was not at that meeting. However, the delegates to that committee are no longer with council.
Councillor Bowen.
I'm happy to second that motion through Mayor King.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak further to the motion? No. Councillors, any question or debate? If not, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. CM 11.6, minutes of the Crime Prevention Committee held on Tuesday, the 30th November 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that council receives, notes and accepts the minutes and recommendations of the Crime Prevention Committee meeting held on Tuesday, 30th November 2021.
Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
I'll just make one comment, and you can tell from this that I did read the report. Mr. Davin's name is spelled incorrectly in that report. The R is missing from his surname.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Councillors, any questions or debate? Councillor Thurley, do you wish to sum up?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 12, documents for sealing. So CM 12.1, documents for sealing. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion, including A, B and C, that council authorises its seal to be affixed to the documents outlined below in the presence of two signatories authorised to affix the seal pursuant of Regulation 400, the Local Government General Regulation 2005, and the council seal and management of legal documents and advice procedures. A, Albury City Licence to East Albury Tennis Club Incorporated of 650 Short Street, Albury, for 5 years commencing 1 December 2021, file number 09/01776. B, Albury City Crown Lands Licence to Albury North Lavington Swimming Inc. Incorporated of Reserve 73373, Albury North Swim Centre, 5 years commencing 1 July 2021, file number 01751, and C, Albury City Deed of Adjustment, lots 8 and 9, Albury Airport Aerostop to SR McLaughlin, file number 01726. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Thurley.
Second the motion.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No.
Councillors, any questions or debate? If not, happy to move the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Now, at this stage, let the record show that councillors Thurley and Glacken are leaving the chamber. Item CM13, Officers' Reports for Consideration. CM 13.1, Development Application 10.2021.39058.1, Hospital Car Park, Albury Wodonga Health, Albury Hospital, 610 and 614 East Street, 169 and 165 Barella Road, as well as 166 Bilber Street. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move an alternative motion, which is somewhere.
Does someone? There it is. Okay.
Thank you. I move that Council A receives the contents of this report and B grants consent to development application 10.2021.39058.1 for a temporary at-grade car park for 105 cars and motorcycles for the exclusive use of employees of the Albury Base Hospital for a period of no longer than 10 years on land described as lots 7 and 9 in DP 26768, lot 8 in DP 392155, and lot 55 in DP 29587, addressed as 610 and 614 East Street, 165 Barella Road, and 166 Bilber Street, East Albury, subject to the conditions contained in the draft determination included at attachment 6 to this report, with the additional requirement for the proposed native frangipanis to be a minimum of 2 metres in height and Chinese elms to be a minimum 3 metres in height when planted to provide more immediate shade.
Do we have a seconder for the motion? Councillor Callaghan.
I'm happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mayor King. I understand that this car park is an important component of the adjacent emergency upgrade at Albury Base Hospital, which our community desperately needs. However, I don't agree that the proposed landscaping is adequate in the context of the proposed use as a temporary car park. And I would also argue that 10 years is a very long time frame for a temporary car park. With the long time frame in mind, I don't believe that the proposed height of the trees is adequate as per the landscape plan, which includes 4 Chinese elms at the corners of the car park planted at 2 metres high and 30 native frangipanis in the beds between the centre bays of the car park planted at 1.5 to 1.8, noting that 1.5 is barely the height of an average car. These trees are estimated to reach 6 and 10 metres respectively in height by 20 years. Therefore, these trees at an estimate may only grow to 3 to 5 metres respectively at the end of the proposed 10-year life of the car park. I also note that there are no plantings proposed for the eastern or western boundaries. More mature trees will increase shade and improve privacy to adjacent dwellings, minimise the visual impact of the car park on the streetscape, and contribute positively to the character of the locality in accordance with Part 10, Division H of the Albury DCP. Thank you.
Councillor Edwards, happy to take a question. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the most appropriate member of staff. I presume from the information supplied around this matter that there is no scope to further build car parks on the existing hospital site. And that's the reason. And the 10-year time frame is due to the scale of the construction or the likely disruption caused by the construction of the emergency department.
Mr. CEO, through you. Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question and for you, Mayor King. So at this particular stage, there are no plans, concrete plans from Albury Wodonga Health to provide additional parking on the Albury Base Hospital site. They're going through a master plan process at the moment, which will determine the best use for the site and location for hospital intensification around Albury, Wodonga or in between. So the proposal of 10 years is to allow them to undertake that process. Should they decide to stay on the base hospital site, then it'll allow them sufficient time then to fully design, plan for and obtain budget funds and then construct any additional parking on the site. Should they relocate to an alternate site, then it would allow for that process to occur as well. That's why the recommendation from staff is for 10 years.
Councillor Cameron, happy with that? Any further questions? Okay, got another question. Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the relevant staff member. Does it take 10 years to create a master plan? Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. I guess like anything else, master plans could take a substantial period of time. The important thing with any master plan is make certain that you have suitable consultation with all relevant stakeholders. So obviously with an organisation as complex and as diverse as Albury Wodonga Health, there are numerous stakeholders. They're not only the users of the facility, whether they be medical professionals, also visitors to the site. There's also obviously the convoluted and complicated funding mechanism being provided by 2 state governments. So whilst it may not necessarily take that long in some master plan instances, you can understand why in others it may take that long.
Thank you. Another question, Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. Through you to the most relevant member of staff. Noting Mr. Hutchinson's proposed amended plan, what would be the implications of removing those car parks, specifically to the emergency upgrade?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King. So that the hospital upgrade, which is consideration in the next report, has got a shortfall of approximately about 97 car spaces, due to removal of some car spaces on the premises, and also the extra car parking generated from the additions and the alterations to the emergency department. So this, we've provided 105 car spaces, more than compensates for the demand created by the emergency department redevelopment. Obviously, if it was then to go below that number of the mid-90s and went into somewhere in the 70s or the like, as had been suggested, and obviously there would be a shortfall from the emergency hospital redevelopment, which would exacerbate any additional shortfall and impact from existing hospital operations.
Happy to take a question at this stage, if that's okay. Darryl, Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, to the relevant staff member. I've got actually a couple of questions. It was raised in the community forum. Has CCTV been discussed at any length due to the fact of staff moving to and from the area later at night?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question, and for you, Mayor King, not directly with Albury City. Should they wish to install CCTV within the actual car park premises, they would not necessarily require council approval. They have indicated they'll be providing suitable lighting to make certain it is safe, and there's a condition there recommended around making certain that lighting is designed in accordance with AS 4282, which is around controlling obtrusive effects of outdoor lighting to minimise any potential impact upon adjoining properties. But in short, I haven't discussed it directly with council staff, but they would not likely require permission to install CCTV on private property.
Thank you very much. If I could follow up with B. And again, the concept of the shift change, that people are going to be leaving the hospital from working and going to the car park at 11 o'clock at night, 3 o'clock in the morning, et cetera, et cetera. Or is the concept of the car park for staff usage? So when there's many visitors at the hospital, the staff use the staff car park, and when at 11 o'clock at night, there are very, very few visitors to the hospital, do the staff then park in the on-site car park? I wasn't sure. Is there some sort of delineation between when the staff are expected to use or encouraged to use and when not?
And thank you for the question. And again, for you, Mayor King, I guess in regards to the actual use of the car park, the idea of the car park is, as I said before, is to release, I guess, to provide additional car parking to address existing shortfalls with the hospital, as well as the additional car parking demand created by the use. The emergency department use obviously will have the patients or visitors attending the site attending on site. So therefore you would expect that they would want to keep as many car spaces free as possible on the site. So the use would be to encourage staff to utilise the proposed car park. It may not necessarily be those staff are shift workers. Obviously, some of the staff may be during normal daylight hours.
Sure. And one final, if I could possibly. So does the extension of the emergency department hinge on the outcome of this DA that we're debating at the moment, i.e. if per se tonight we decided to reject this DA, would that then stop the progress on the extension to the emergency department, or has that not been spoken of?
Mr. Christie.
Thank you for the question. Again, for you, Mayor King. In relation to determination of the emergency department application, that's a matter for the regional planning panel. So I can't, I guess, say that I could speak on their behalf and as to which way they would go. In regards to the officer's assessment report that's to be presented to that panel, representing support from an officer level, then the major issue that has been raised by council staff during assessment of the emergency department, which was reiterated in a further information letter, was the lack of car parking provided. And so that was a significant response to the issues raised by staff. So it's likely that a staff recommendation would be to not support the emergency department in the absence of providing sufficient car parking to cater for its demands and to cater for the offset of car parking on site. How the regional planning panel decided to take that recommendation, I could not say, because obviously it'd be up to them whether they supported that recommendation or had an alternative, but that would be the impact upon the staff recommendation, that it would no longer support the emergency department based on the lack of car parking.
Thank you very much.
I believe Councillor Cameron, do you have a question? Is that right? Are you indicating a question there? Okay. Speaker 4, Councillor Baker.
Yes, while acknowledging the car park, the temporary car park, 10 years, it's a fair time, is not ideal. And I don't think it's a great spot for a car park. But I do believe the most important thing is to get the new emergency department built. And due to that priority, I'll be supporting the motion, even though I'm uneasy about the car park. And I understand totally all the objectors, why they're concerned, and it's not a good place for one. But having said those things, I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Speaking against, Councillor Bowen.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'm opposed to this car park in principle. I think that planning needs to be done a little bit better than just doing a car park next door, because they didn't make provision for car parking on their own property. I think it's a poor way to run an organisation in a planning situation. I think there's the safety aspect, there's a lighting aspect, and there's an impact on adjoining land for people in Bilborough Street and also surrounding areas. The challenge with this also is that not only is it a bad idea in my opinion, I just feel that it would be better on premises. And the reason for it to go next door, obviously I understand, is that because the only way that they can get approval is if we have enough car parking for the emergency department. I definitely want an emergency. I just want to state this very clearly. I definitely want to not stop the progress of the emergency department, but I think it is not a great place for it to happen. I don't think it's the right move to go. I think that we're being made scapegoats, that we have to vote on something to make an emergency department go through when it really should have been planned for in the first place on site. Having said that, though, so I am voting against it. I'll probably vote with it because I know the 20 submissions that have put their submissions forward. I understand and I empathise with them, and it's not what I want to have happen. But I also have to consider the 50,000 plus people and not put anyone in jeopardy from a health crisis or a safety aspect. So it is not my intent to hold the progress up, but I'm pretty disappointed with the D application.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Speaking for, I believe, Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I apologise. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, my sentiments are almost exactly the same as Councillor Bowen's that he expressed very well, I thought, just previously. I actually feel as though council and myself are being blackmailed, in a sense, into approving this development. If this development was for a commercial purpose and was a commercial property, there is no way I would support it. It's in the wrong place and it's substandard in so many ways. And I am attracted to the idea of voting for the motion that's currently before us from Councillor Edwards and Councillor Callaghan. I think they are trying to improve at what is essentially a bad proposition as best they may. And I'll be supporting the motion before us. But it's not tenable, I think, for any of us to vote against this motion, because to do so would prejudice the development of the new emergency department at the base hospital, which is sorely and badly needed in our community. So it's a very unenviable position to be in as an Albury City councillor, to have to choose between an emergency department or approving a very substandard proposal in terms of this car park. And I think the local member, who I note is now the Parliamentary Secretary for Health, needs to look at this issue and take responsibility for him and his government and the lack of planning and the situation that has now arisen with this. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Also speaking for, Councillor Betteridge.
Through you, Mayor King, supporting the sentiments of Councillor Bowen and Councillor Cameron, this is a very, very poor situation we find ourselves in. We are being asked to make a decision that if a commercial entity put forward, we would refuse it outright. But the greater community need of an improved emergency department, unfortunately to me, outweighs this. I feel that being a councillor, you have to make decisions that sometimes you don't like. This isn't fun. This is a hard decision, but I'm looking at the broader community and the benefits to that. And unfortunately, there's going to be some people who lose out here, and they have every right to be disappointed in the process. But I can't change that. All I can do is support what is a DA before us that will help to fast track the expansion of an emergency department that will save lives and have a positive impact. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Betteridge. A speaker against, Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to agree with Councillor Baker, with Councillor Cameron, with Councillor Betteridge, and with Councillor Bowen. I think it's a really tough position to be put in, and I certainly don't agree that it's an appropriate space for a car park. And I feel it's unfortunate that we're deciding between a car park and an emergency department. And I find it's a sad outcome.
Any further speakers? Councillor Edwards, happy to put the motion if you are happy to close debate for us.
Thank you, Mayor King. It's clear that there's limited support for this car park from the community, and I agree it's not ideal. However, it will facilitate the emergency department upgrade and allow the applicant to commence planning for their future on-site parking requirements, which hopefully becomes reality sooner rather than later. Thank you.
Happy to put the motion. Happy to put the motion in division. Those for? Councillor Cameron, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Betteridge and Councillor Baker. Those against? The motion is carried. Councillor Callaghan didn't raise her hand, so that abstained from voting, so that's a vote against. Thank you. The motion is carried. Item CM 13.2. We move on to development application 10.2021.38711.1, alterations and additions to Albury Base Hospital Redevelopment Council consideration to make submission to Southern Regional Planning Panel. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mayor King. I'd like to move another alternative motion.
Does anyone wish to second? Oh, she's got it there, sorry. Yeah, formally read it out first, sorry.
Okay,
Councillor
I move
Edwards.
that Council A receives and notes the report, and B determines that Council makes a separate submission to the Southern Regional Planning Panel in relation to development application (DA) 10.2021.38711.1 2021.38711.1, which seeks approval of alterations and additions to the emergency department of Albury Base Hospital at lot 14 in deposited plan brackets DP 1175382 at 201 Barella Road, East Albury. The submission provides support for the application, noting the improved service delivery to the community, but requests the consideration be provided to the provision of suitable end of trip facilities to facilitate cycling to the site. This would help alleviate the shortfall in car parking provided on the hospital site by reducing the demand for parking and assist in alleviating any adverse impacts upon the surrounding locality. The submission should also note the need to ensure that any future hospital development ensures that sufficient car parking and end of trip facilities are provided on site.
A seconder, Councillor Betteridge.
Second, Mayor King.
Councillor Edwards, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, thank you, Mayor King. Council should make a submission in support of this application to the Southern Regional Planning Panel for its benefit to our community. However, the submission should also include a request for the consideration of active transport, including end-of-trip facilities and bicycle racks for hospital staff, as identified in the Statement of Environmental Effects, the detailed parking assessment, and as in accordance with Part 17.3.3 of the DCP that requires car parks with 30 or more spaces to provide at least one bicycle rack space for each 10 car spaces.
Do we have speakers for or against, or questions, councillors? Oh, was that Councillor Cameron? Sorry, did you have a question or a no? Thank you. Councillor Edwards, do you, if there's no further questions or debate, do you wish to sum up?
Given the loss of on-site car parks, the additional car park across the road, and the fact that the site still has less car parking than would be usually required, the provision of end-of-trip facilities for staff, including bicycle racks, can only help to encourage active transport and also alleviate the parking situation at the hospital. Thank you.
Happy to put the motion. Those for, in division. Councillor Callaghan, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Bowen, Councillor King, Councillor Betteridge and Councillor Baker. Those against? Councillor Cameron. The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. Now we're going to get councillors Glacken and Thurley back in the room. Please note that councillors Glacken and Thurley have returned to the chamber at 7:33. Next item, councillors, is CM 13.3 Ernest Grant Park Car Park, Play Space and Skate Park Contract number 20/02632. Councillor Bowen.
That council move to accept the tender from XL Grey Brunei, or should I say A, accepts tender from XL Grey Brunei Project Limited for contract number 20/02632, the construction of the Ernest Grant Park Car Park, Play Space and Skate Park for the lump sum amount of $1,611,262.94, including GST, and B, makes the necessary adjustments to the 2022-23 capital budget program to accommodate the shortfall in funding for the project.
Councillor Edwards.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Bowen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Not at this stage, thank you. I'll sum up.
Councillors, any questions or debate in relation to the motion? Councillor Bowen, do you wish to sum up?
Thank you. The need for a great car parking space in that area, in the Thurgoona area, is lacking, and so this will be a great aspect to that area. Plus, also the play space and skate park. It is great, even though we had a number of submissions, that we've got something that's come a little bit over budget, but happy to go with this to make sure we get some action on this situation. So I'd like to hope that the other councillors will vote on this going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen. Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 13.4, Committees and Working Parties Register Update. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council endorses the updated 2022 Albury City Committees and Working Parties Register.
Councillor Betteridge.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley. Do you wish to?
I just have one comment in that we do not have an alternate delegate to the MDA. And we haven't had in my time on council, but I'll just say to other councillors, if you wish to be involved, please let me know and I'd be happy to welcome you aboard.
Any questions or further debate, councillors? Did you wish to sum up?
No, thank you.
Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 13.5, change of council meeting date from 28th of February 2022 to the 3rd of March 2022 due to the Local Government New South Wales Special Conference. Councillor Bowen.
I'd like to move, thank you, Mayor King, that Council adopts the change of council meeting date from the 28th of February 2022 to the 3rd of March, as I will be attending that LG NSW conference and away at that time. Cheers.
Councillor Betteridge.
Happy to second, Mayor King.
Councillor Bowen, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. I believe that there'll be three other than myself in attendance, so therefore the need to change the date. But otherwise, that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions or debate, councillors? Do you wish to sum up at all, Councillor Bowen? If not, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 14, Officers' Reports for Noting. CM 14.1, Investment Balances, December 2021. Councillor Glacken.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to move the recommendation as a motion that Council receives and notes the investment balances report for the month of December 2021. Thank you.
Councillor Callaghan.
Happy to second the motion, Mayor King.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, I'll hold my reserve my right of reply should there be the need for one, and look forward to any questions that councillors might ask. Thank you.
Councillors, any questions or debate? Councillor Glacken, are you happy to close debate?
Thank you. No.
In that case, happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. CM 14.2, Local Roads and Community Infrastructure, LRC 1, Phase 3 Grant Funding. Councillor Glacken.
Thank you. Through you to move the recommendation as a motion, Madam Mayor, that Council receives and notes a report of nominated projects to be funded under Local Roads and Community Infrastructure LRCI Program Phase 3. Thank you.
Councillor Thurley.
I'll second the motion, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Glacken, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Yes, very briefly, with a view to highlighting a couple of aspects. We as council have benefited from phase 1 and 2. We've had a number of projects come forward, including roadworks. These are slightly different projects in stage 3, and I'm very mindful that we must be most grateful to our staff for having these projects ready for such financial windfalls provided by the government to us, and for us to be able to take advantage of this. So terrific opportunity for Albury to be able to achieve further infrastructure development through the grant and the generosity of the government. Thank you very much.
Councillors, any questions or debate? Councillor Glacken, do you wish to close debate?
No.
Happy to put the motion. Those for? Those against? The motion is carried. Thank you. CM 14.3, Councillor Conference Attendance, 1 July 2021 to 31 December 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Mayor King. I move that Council receives and notes the report on Councillor Conference Attendance Report for the period 1 July 2021 to 31 December 2021.
Councillor Betteridge.
Be the second, Mayor King.
Councillor Thurley, do you wish to speak to the motion?
Simply a routine matter, Madam Mayor, telling the ratepayers who's going to where and why, part of our openness and transparency.
Councillors, any questions or debate? And Councillor Thurley, if you're happy to put the motion, those for, those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. CM 15, Delegates Reports for Noting. CM 15.1, Murray-Darling Association Delegates Report, November 2021. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Council receives and notes the Murray-Darling Association Delegates Report for tabling at Council, November 2021.
Councillor Callaghan.
Thank you, Mayor King. Happy to second.
Councillor Thurley, would you like to speak to the report?
Just a couple of things. It is a bit of past history now, given it was November last year. A couple of important things. The CEO at the time, Emma Bradbury, has resigned, and we've replaced, we have a new CEO called Mark Lamb, who will be taking up office space in this building sometime soon, I hope. I'd like to particularly pay a great debt of thanks to Emma Bradbury. She has been the CEO for, I think, 8 or 9 years. And for 7 of those, I was the national president working with Emma. I guess the other thing to note, and it's relevant to this council, is that she's moving to be the CEO of Berkeleyshire, based in Tennant Creek. And they are one of the other councils that has a regional deal. So it may be that there will be some opportunities to collaborate again with Emma Bradbury in the future. That's basically the other 2 things. The National Conference, 78th National Conference we held here in Albury, and planning is well underway. That's in September this year. We'd be expecting around about 150 to 200 delegates. So it's a pretty big deal. I'd encourage you to spread the word and encourage people to come to this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thurley. Any questions or debate? Happy to put the motion, Councillor Thurley?
Yeah.
Oh, they will. Beautiful. Those for, sorry. Those against, the motion is carried. Thank you. CM 16, Notice of Urgent Business. Mr. CEO.
Through you, Mayor King. No items received thus far this evening for this item, but I was looking for Council's indulgence in receiving an oral report from the Deputy CEO on the January storm events. If Mr. Ferris would like to give us an update, please.
Through you, Mayor King. Yeah, just an opportunity to provide an update on the storm events of January. Obviously, they were significant, where we recorded one of the wettest Januaries on record. We received in excess of 2,000 calls for assistance from our community during that period. And then the state government subsequently declared it a natural disaster. It was a huge coordinated effort led by some fantastic response agencies we have in our community, and they were supported by our internal Albury City teams and contractors and volunteers. So we've transitioned from that storm response and cleanup, and we've moved now into infrastructure repair phase. So we're currently out there rebuilding roads, culverts, drainage systems and bridges. The sewer system was also compromised during the storm, predominantly from stormwater ingress, where you had increased flows and then discharges into private property. We've been undertaking CCTV work and jetting and further investigations on both the stormwater and the sewer network. We've also been looking at illegal connections to that sewer network, which may have influenced or contributed to the higher flows. Some of the initial improvement work's already started, and we've identified some we've started to implement. And that's been primarily around diversion drains and cut-offs around some of those natural areas to try and divert the stormwater away. That won't, that'll just help limit further impacts on private property. However, the storm, the intensity of the storm that passed would not cope with those berms, and that won't cope with similar intensities. We've also been working with the development and the construction industry around sediment control and our engineering standards. We've identified some longer term issues and improvements and extensions to our networks that will move into design phase and consider as part of our budget considerations. We'll continue to work with those unfortunate members of our community that have been significantly impacted through the storm, supporting them through their insurance claim process. Some have made claims direct with Albury City, and the determination of those are being considered and are pending. With those, we'll certainly continue to assist. Obviously, we've had a number that have claimed their insurance through their own insurance agency. The ones that are through council, if they're unsuccessful, we'll certainly continue to support them through their respective insurance companies or access to the Natural Disaster Recovery Fund. So yeah, we are extremely sympathetic to the impacted community members, and we thank the broader community for their understanding through a very difficult time and their patience. Thank you, Mayor King.
I believe Councillor Cameron has a question. Councillor Cameron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions through you to the most appropriate member of staff. My first question is, who is responsible for the presence of silt socks in the drainage system in Thurgoona during the first event, council or the developer? My second question is, has the construction of the traffic lights in Thurgoona recently exhibited, and is there any evidence that that construction of those traffic lights has affected runoff, and particularly runoff into sewers? Thank you.
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mayor King. Thanks, Councillor Cameron, for the questions. The silt socks in the Thurgoona area, they were placed by the developer as part of a sediment control process. Some of those areas had been returned to council, and therefore those silt socks remained in place. As discussed, the storm and the runoff was significant, and the impact that those silt socks had is undetermined, given that the underground system would have been at capacity at any stage. So there is some shared issues there with regard to the silt socks, one still being in place, given that they were first installed by the developer, and then when it was handed over, they remained in place when they became council assets. With the traffic lights, there is no evidence at this stage that the construction of the traffic lights at that intersection have created any adverse flooding impacts on the nearby properties. Thank you, Mickey.
Councillor Cameron, a follow-up question.
So if I'm to understand your answer correctly in terms of the silt socks, some of the area that contained silt socks, some of the drainage was still under the control of the developer, some of it had been returned to council, and in those areas that have been returned to council, for some inexplicable reason, the silt socks had not been removed. Why were the silt socks not removed in those drainage assets that have been returned to council?
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mayor King, in the handover of those, it wasn't identified that the silt socks were still in place in the drains, and we've taken action on that to ensure that doesn't happen in future handover of developed land to council.
Councillor Cameron.
What would be the normal practice, and what has been the practice in the past? It was my understanding that the developer would remove the silt socks at the end of the construction phase and prior to returning the land to council. Is that correct?
Mr. Ferris.
Through you, Mayor King, that is correct.
Nothing further. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you very much. Councillors, we are now moving into closed session for confidential matters. We'll need a motion for that to happen. Councillor Thurley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council moves into confidential to discuss item CM 17.1, as this is a confidential item exclusive of press or public, on the grounds that the matters relate to the matters and information of the following: C, information that would, if disclosed, confer a commercial advantage on a person with whom the council is conducting or proposes to conduct business, and D, commercial information of a confidential nature that would, if disclosed, 1, prejudice the commercial position of the person who supplied it, or 2, confer a commercial advantage on a competitor of the council.
Councillor Bowen.
Happy to second that motion, Mayor King.
Councillors, any questions or debate? Okay, are there any statements or submissions from the public regarding the reasons as identified for this for confidential item CM 17.1? If there is no debate, I'll put the motion. No submissions. So no submissions, sorry. Happy to put the motion. Those for, those against, the motion is carried. So we will now clear the gallery, please. And we will also cease transmission of the meeting.